Okay, so let's get into some of the more interesting parts of this episode, which are the love quadrangle.
Quadrangle, that would be called a square. Rectangle is also would be an acceptable one.
I feel like just
reality therapist perception.
Bachelorette. Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I have some opinions on this show, and sometimes she lets me speak some of them on this podcast.
Well, we have a lot to talk about this week. We are on the B side of our Reactivity TV for the week, and we are talking about Bachelor in Paradise Season 9, Episode 4. And there is a lot to dig into. What did you think of this week's episode?
Well, as a kind of newer viewer of reality TV in general, this was actually the first episode that felt like what I originally expected when we were getting into this whole thing, where, it's just filled with a lot of drama and partner swapping and like kind of chaos and immaturity and, unintelligent conversations with a bunch of drunk people on a beach. And like the first 3 episodes, it was a lot more tame than I was expecting. And this episode, like it really felt like it ramped up, and we've hit that spot where I'm like, oh, this is what I had envisioned in my mind when you had said, hey, come and co-host a reality TV podcast with me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought there was a lot going on, a lot to talk about. And just all around some pretty good craziness. But can I just bring up one thing that I've sort of noticed? You talk oftentimes about like the edit, and I hear this all the time. And like, I don't think I really fully appreciated what the edit was. When we started both Golden and BIP, I had feelings about specific people. I liked certain people, I didn't like other people. And after now 4 weeks, seeing how production has framed different conversations and things, they really do have a tremendous amount of power to, change how somebody feels about these individuals. And while I think that's quite interesting, it also makes me question some of the contestants on this show. Like, what would drive you to be willing to put your reputation and your public image into the hands of just some random arbitrary people in some editing room somewhere? I think it's just a fascinating sort of case study on the psychology of some of these contestants.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I personally just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I if I couldn't write into the contract, I get to review all edits, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And I am sure that is non-negotiable in the reality TV contract world.
Oh, sure. Oh, for sure. And you're right. Like you do, as a contestant cast member on this show, you are quite vulnerable. You do take a huge risk and put so much of the control in other people's hands. That's literally like what producers do, is they like manage the narrative. At the same time, though, there's so much weight given to the concept of the edit that sometimes it like allows people to not take responsibility for their actions. Like, for example, Kat, one can argue she's getting a really bad edit, but at the same time, the producers aren't sticking those words in her mouth and then having her say them in a produced way. Like, she is actually choosing those words and that tone in what she's saying. And so while the edit might be not favorable to Kat, and maybe they're choosing to show those moments of Kat saying what she's saying and how she's saying it, but Kat is still saying those things.
Yeah, and there's some weight to the abundance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one thing if, we've got an edit of somebody saying something a little bit off color or a little bit rude or a little bit mean, and we've got like this one edit we have to pick and choose where we're going to crop it out of and put it into. That's like one scenario where I'm sure everybody has something that could get taken out of context. But then you have somebody like a Kat where, oh no, it's just, what do they call that? Verbal diarrhea or whatever, where it's just one thing after the other. You just have a plethora of opportunities and options by which you can just start plucking stuff and dropping it into the episode. So I feel like I feel like on one hand, she's probably the best friend of the editors, because they probably make, or she probably makes their job so easy with the abundance of content. On the other hand, I would imagine they must absolutely hate her.
Yeah, I mean, those unflattering like chin shots from the GoPro last week while they were horseback riding told me all I need to know about what a pain in the ass Kat must be. Because anyone who was her friend on the production team would not have used those, or they would have changed the angle for her.
Yeah.
So
because Tanner had reasonable angles.
Sure.
And he's taller, so he should have had probably worse angles just from a physics perspective.
Sure. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to get way deeper into the cat of it all on this episode. So let's do a quick recap and then we'll really dive in.
Sounds good.
Okay. So a lot did happen this episode. We finally get the conclusion of the poo baby situation and we say goodbye to Sam. We meet a couple of new men on the beach. We meet John Henry and John B and see who they bring on their one-on-one dates. We also see a little bit of a shakeup on the beach with relationships standing the test of the truth box, and also people deciding now is the time to shoot their shot. And finally, we end with the cocktail party, which gets a little bit explosive, and a hurricane's coming to the beach, also known as Hurricane Cat. And then we're left kind of with a cliffhanger of what happens at the end of this episode.
Yeah. So let me ask you a quick question. Was this entire episode just one very subtle poop joke?
What do you mean?
We had 2 Johns come down to the beach and yet no John for Sam. I promise that is the last of the poop jokes. That's it. That's all I got.
There were a lot of poop jokes this episode. Yeah. I hope that's the end.
Me too. It's like one episode worth of poop jokes is good, and then I'm ready to move on. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, Sam ultimately gets to move on as well. The doctor's orders, she has to leave the beaches of paradise after no bowel movement after 10 days. So she bids farewell to the beach and to Aaron S.
In a very anticlimactic way. I wasn't really liking any of it. It just felt like kind of an awkward goodbye. The only thing of note was that she did say to him, "I'll see you soon." So maybe there's some, thing that they're saying where we're gonna stay in touch. But it just felt like, Aaron S didn't seem to really care. There wasn't a lot of emotion. It just felt anticlimactic, and then she was gone, and that was kind of that.
Yeah. I was expecting a little bit more from their connection, but I was starting to get a sense even from last week's episode that she just really wasn't that into him, that she was maybe using this as a reason to leave. And we've seen her kind of dip out before. She didn't even make it through night 1 on Clayton's season. And so
she barely made it down the steps the first day. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it just was a case of they probably had a connection. Maybe they had a good friendship, but they both seemed not really into each other and not that, torn up by Sam needing to leave early.
Yeah, I agree.
So Sam leaves, Aaron S stays, and we are left with 7 men and 10 women at this point.
Not great odds.
With
1 day to go, correct? One day plus the day of the rose ceremony.
That's what it seems like. I believe that's how much time they had. And that ratio changes very quickly because we are met with not another woman to kind of even the playing field. We are met by another man, John Henry from Charity Season, who makes his way down the stairs and onto the beaches of paradise.
Now, can I just say about John Henry, finally, some guy walks down the beach and I understand the appeal. I think this guy is great. If I had a sister, he's the guy I want my sister to end up with. just seems like a really nice guy. I like the little nervous energy. I like, when he finally gets into his comfort zone, he really shines. He's a little bit goofy, but he's got like a real job, and just the whole thing. He's a good looking guy. I think he's just, I'm into it. I would want to be friends with him. I'd want to hang out with him. If I'm on the beach, I'm like, yeah, that's a guy I feel like I can trust and buddy up to, and stuff like that. I'm into John Henry. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved him too. I had no recollection of him at all from charity season. I only remember kind of meeting him pre-season when, many podcasts do the like meet the men of charity season. And I just remember a detail about someone being an underwater welder, but I didn't connect job to name to face. And so I was kind of meeting him for the first time along with you. And I thought he was so sincere and so sweet. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I loved him.
Yeah. So he ends up with a date card, and he pulls a couple of different girls to have conversations with.
Right.
And his number one is, shocker, spoiler, Kylie, right? And
she's hot.
She is objectively probably the most attractive woman on the beach, and probably in a show that is just littered with beautiful people, she's probably in the top 5%, right? So sure, yeah, I get it. But I do think that, and I want to come back to this later on, but so Kylie, he tells her flat out, and I appreciate sort of his like nervous honesty. He's like, hey, Kylie, you're my number one. And she's just like, like, yeah, I really like Avon, but like, I'm open, right? Which is not what she says to Avon later. And so I do have feelings about that I want to get to, but before we get there, so I'm already thinking like, okay, I could see she definitely left the door open, and he already told her number one. So I'm like, is this going to be the shakeup? The after all this waiting period, is John Henry going to be the one to pull Kylie? But he ends up taking a different route. Before he does that, he also talks to Kat. Kat was another situation where he was like bluntly honest, where he's just conversing with her, and she's asking where his head's at and what he's thinking. He's like, yeah, Kylie's like super hot, and I'm just like, so my first question was, did he already decide Kat's not the one? So like, it doesn't matter what I say to her because she's definitely not the one? Or was he just so nervous and that he was just like blurting out the honesty? But I appreciated it, but ultimately he plucks Olivia. And I have a lot of thoughts about this. But yeah, what do you think about the entire process of the conversation?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a really good setup for the rest of the episode that he took Kat first, because there's all this commentary about Kat being a man-eater and a praying mantis and all of that fun stuff. And so it was interesting to kind of hear her commentary of like, he's just so hot. I'm not even like, I can't even listen or hear what he's saying. And then we hear what he's saying, and it's, Kylie's so hot. I'm really into her. And then, yeah, the Kylie Avon situation I thought was funny, especially as we kind of fast forward into the episode. But long story short, I was not surprised by his pick of Olivia. We've been kind of critical of Olivia and her maturity level, but I get it. I was like, yeah, she was really disarming. She was really kind of comforting in a way that wasn't like very overtly obvious. It just felt authentic. And I got a sense of like, oh, you're good with people, Olivia. Like that was the sense that I walked away with. So for John Henry coming in and being so nervous that he's literally shaking, it didn't shock me that he picked Olivia for this date, someone to be comfortable with.
Yeah, you've said you've talked about Mercedes in past weeks about what a great dater she was. And what I have said from the very beginning about Olivia is she's a great flirter. I wasn't sure how competent she was on the dating aspect of things. But as we kind of fast forward into the date itself, I actually think that she's a fantastic dater. She I think does really well with the word you used was disarming, really disarming the situation, making it kind of fun, making it okay to laugh and for bad things. Think about when Will goes falling into the pool, right? He had just snubbed Olivia, goes with Kylie, falls in the pool and can't, kind of
recover.
Yeah, can't recover. And Kylie completely inept at getting him to recover. Now you think about what would have Olivia done in that situation, and I think we see hints of that with the John Henry date, where he was very shy, very awkward, and just her ability to just get you to get out of your own head a little bit and just have fun and relax, to the point where he's basically putting on scuba man heads by halfway through the date. So I think she demonstrates that she's a fantastic dater. And I think she's getting a good edit, and part of that might just be because she's also a great narrator of the season from the female side. But yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah. And I mean, you couldn't have planned her breaking the bed like better. Like that is like really what they needed.
85 pounds. How did she break the bed? Like, I feel like, was that a producer plant situation, or was that just happenstance?
No, but I'm glad for John Henry and her sake that it did, because it kind of like leveled the playing field in that sense of him being so nervous. And then this happened. She had said, like, I would have been mortified if John Henry hadn't been so nervous. And so it kind of gave them kind of a vulnerability to bond over. And that really, I think, launches them forward in their comfort level with one another, because it was a pretty intimate date. And I think it also shows, Catherine and I have talked about this on previous Reactivity TV episodes, that oftentimes people think in order to demonstrate vulnerability, I need to trauma dump on you or tell you about my sad story. But actually, something that is quite vulnerable that builds connection is being able to laugh with one another. Laughter and joy are actually two of the most vulnerable emotions that you can experience. And that these two strangers were to find commonality and laughter and joy with one another draws their connection so much closer than one of them saying, like, hey, let me tell you about this awful thing that happened in my life. And we see that. And to the point where she's able to joke around with him, like he uses his sweaty towel on her. She's like,
that might not have been a joke. I think that was a legitimate accident.
No, I think it was an accident. But
stabbing her in the eye as well was
just kind of like,
and they just rolled with it.
Mishap.
Yeah.
And then she like kind of climbed on top of his back, and I loved that she even said, like, tell me about your tattoos. Like, I'm like, tell me. And he, kind of couldn't, because he was enjoying the
massage.
The massage. But anyway, it was probably my favorite date that we've seen on this season, that I've seen on like recent seasons of Bachelor in Paradise. I loved it. I felt like their connection was very authentic. I was rooting for them to kiss, and they seemed to have good chemistry, all of it. I mean, I thought it was favorite date.
Yeah. So I have a couple of things that you brought up. The first is, I've been very critical about the actual date activities that the production, both on Golden and here, have put together. I'm on the record. I want to see dates where you have the opportunity to be intimate. And by intimate, I don't mean sexual. I mean, be intimate either in the activity you're doing together or in your ability to communicate. And this was a great one. When they went to the spa, the first question I had was, are they just going to be at tables next to each other getting massages? But no, they were massaging each other, giving each other facials. And I just, this is the type of date that I want. Like, if I am, on the market looking to form a connection with somebody, like, this is where I want to take you. And this is the type of thing I want to do. And so I thought probably the best date activity for building a connection among both GB and BIP for this particular round of seasons. You touched on building the genuine connection, and that sort of leads us into the Peter triangle. Here's my position on this. I don't think there's a real triangle here. I think Olivia has taken a couple of pointers from Mercedes, And I think that she has stepped up her spoiler. I'm giving her high marks in Grade the Game this week because of her, one, talking with Peter ahead of time, which I thought was a really big deal. You know, when she got asked to go on a date, she had the conversation. I don't think she's into Peter at all. We learned that they have not kissed yet. There's really been no real intimacy of any kind, and they've just kind of been hanging out as friends. And, you know, she's kind of playing the game of like, oh, there's two guys. I really like them both. I think we can all see it jumps out of the screen that there's nothing there with Peter, and John Henry and her have so much chemistry. But I think she's just playing this game so well and threading it so well and getting a really good edit from production as a result.
See, I'm worried that Peter is playing the game well. Peter's not into Olivia at all.
Agreed.
And I think the way that he speaks to her during the pre-date conversation and the post-date conversation, it's pretty evident he's being kind of manipulative.
Sure.
Right? Like he's saying, I really don't want you to go. I really want to stay here and build our connection. And then he's saying, you know, I've really wanted to kiss you, but I haven't had the right opportunity. No, Peter. The opportunity is you need a rose. And now you see that this person that you thought you had it in the bag with is going to pick somebody else. And so you are giving her all of this flattery and now expressing all of this over interest in her when you've been very passive for the past week. Like it feels manipulative. It like with the intention to get a rose. And I'm worried that Olivia is eating it up / also has a sense of loyalty to Peter because he sort of saved her last time. So for me, I don't see it as clearly as, well, I see it clearly that she and John Henry have the chemistry and she and Peter don't, but I'm worried that Olivia doesn't see it that clearly because Peter is kind of pulling her strings a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit manipulative as well. I think I wrote down in my notes something like, there's a lot of like I statements, like I don't want you to do this, like I, feel this way. And then he would sort of hedge it a little bit with, but obviously you got to do what you got to do. But back to me. And yeah.
The only thing that I did like that he said selfishly, I really want you to stay and I want to hang out and whatever. But it's your time to be selfish. So be selfish, do what you want to do. And that I thought was nice, like not nice, but like fair. Like, yeah. Okay, you're encouraging her to be selfish, meaning try not to let what I just said impact what you're going to do. And ultimately, she did pick the thing that she wanted to do, but I don't know. Part of me, she said something like at one point during the episode, I don't want to make a choice and then have it blow up in my face. Just want to take a quick moment to let you know that at Revive, we are hiring. In our Miami and Pittsburgh offices, we have full and part-time clinician positions open, both 1099 and W-2 positions. And in our Connecticut offices, we are hiring for full-time W-2 clinician positions. And if you want to work in an organization that values support, empowerment, personal and professional growth, and being part of a community, then definitely check out the link in our show notes and apply. We'd love to meet you.
So he's not the only John to arrive. So now comes down, this is John B. And
from charity season.
Also from charity season. So, which is Peter's season. No?
Same season as Peter, same season as Sean, Brayden, John Henry, Tanner.
Oh, so half of the guys on the beach, more than half the guys on the beach are all from the same season? Wow. Okay.
Just like a lot of the girls are from Clayton season.
How long ago was Clayton?
Prior to charities.
Oh, so recent. Okay. All right. Yeah. So John B comes down. I'll be honest. It felt a little bit like he was trying to be Mr. Fun, but like that's just not really who he is. And so I didn't really get a good sense for him. He seems like a nice enough guy. Just I didn't get the impression that who he was trying to be in the face to camera is really who he is. But I don't know. I don't have enough data points at this point to land on that. But what? Tell me what you know of Mr. John B. By the way, this is John B. Bachelor, not John B. OBX.
John B. Rutledge.
Yeah, very clear, because John B. Rutledge is dope as shit.
So John B. from Charity Season, he was a fan favorite. People loved him.
Interesting.
And I thought, and as did much of Bachelor Nation, think that he was going to go a lot farther in Charity Season than he did. But people loved him because he just seemed like such a sweet, nice guy. And yeah, he's maybe a little nerdy. I don't know if that's fair to say, but like, he's not giving like any of that like aggro male energy that we see, like, you know, all those dudes on the beach playing football. Like, he's not that kind of guy. He's just like kind of a really, really sweet guy. And I think even Kylie said like, oh, I just want to hug him. Like, he's that kind of guy. So I was excited to see him on the beach, though there's not really anyone I can see him with. I think, you know, we'll talk about who he picks, but I think, you know, Eliza and Jess are probably like the type of energy that I can see him with, because he's such a sweetheart. But anyway, so I don't know how long he's going to last, because I don't know that he has the appeal and like charisma, yeah, as like to win out some of the other connections that have already been formed.
Who do you even end up picking for conversations? Eliza and anybody else? Is that the only
Mercedes?
He did speak to Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
So and we going really quickly to Mercedes for a second. Again, we've talked about, you just referenced it, that she's a really good dater. If you noticed body language, and Sean, I'll rival you on someone who's good at reading body language. She was like very lean back in their conversation together. And so like not giving any, like, I'm interested in you vibes. So he ends up asking Eliza on a date. And before she says yes, she asks Aaron B. if they can go talk. And the beach is shook. And I think Rachel had said something like, they are so solid as a couple, Eliza and Aaron B. And so if she is thinking about going on this date, that means they're not stable, which means nobody else is. Or if she's open, that means everybody else is open. And I thought that was an interesting assessment.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to trust Rachel's assessment of just about anything. I don't think she's got a good, solid foundation on her own emotions, let alone on assessing other people's. I think she's come a long way since her season, but yeah, I'm selling what she's buying, you know, most of the time. Now, so here's my position on the entire Eliza, Aaron B situation. Similar to kind of the Sam and Aaron S. None of these. You know, these two are not stars. I don't find them to be particularly compelling. I've already talked about how I think Aaron B has had a lot of low character moments. He hasn't had any for at least a whole episode, which is good. He didn't really have any this episode, which is good. So maybe he really did just find Eliza. He's good with Eliza, and now like he can just sort of like be stable, be consistent, and that's fine. But like I'm just not interested in anything going on here. The only noteworthy stuff for me was when Eliza, I feel like the reason and justification she gave for wanting to go on the date was counterintuitive to me. It was basically like, yeah, I want to avoid all these things and all these love triangles, but the reason I want to avoid them now is, or the reason I want to go on them is to be open to a love triangle. Like none of it made sense to me.
Okay, so I understood what she was saying, and I was really happy that she brought that up, and that was her takeaway from what happened last season. I mean, granted, what we saw anyway. And so basically, as I had kind of outlined in one of the first episodes, Eliza went all in and felt like she had to commit to Rodney. And then another guy came on the beach that she was interested in, but she felt like she couldn't give herself the permission to explore that because she had gone all in on Rodney. And so she ended up in this love triangle because she was actually interested in the person that she didn't choose, and felt a lot of guilt for that. So I think she's kind of like, I owe it to myself to explore every connection. I don't want to be in a position where I've, again, invested fully in something without not having all of the information. And I think this was kind of a low stakes situation. I don't actually think she was into John B, and he's not like that threatening in a sense. And so I think this was a really safe way for her to explore that, for her to even give herself a sense of, how much am I really into Aaron B, or am I just into him because he's the only guy here that like we have this mutual connection. And so I give her a lot of credit for being upfront with Aaron about where she was at and why, and for going and giving it a shot. They're on the beach to date, and dating, sometimes dating is trying to figure out, like, do I have a connection with someone? And the other side of dating is figuring out who you don't have a connection with, or figuring out what you don't like. Like, that helps improve your taste level. And so that's what she's doing. She's dating. The thing that she got some criticism for is one piece of what she said to Aaron, which was, you had an opportunity to explore connections here, but I haven't yet. And so we hear people, I think Tyler was one of the people we heard something from, in saying, like, this isn't tennis where I do something and therefore you need to do something in return to kind of volley it back and forth. And I guess I just wanted to get your take on that.
I did pick up on that. And I heard them kind of talking about it throughout the show. And it just comes back to what I said earlier. It's like, I get it. I understand. I disagree with it fundamentally, but I just don't care about you, Eliza. And I don't care about you, Aaron S. Or Aaron B. I'm sorry, Aaron B. And so it just, like, yeah, I think it's a shitty thing to do. I think it's a shitty mentality. I think it's not a way to build a strong foundation. I make a ton of mistakes in our relationship. You make a ton of mistakes in the relationship. I never, go about my day and be like, oh, well, Amy, was late cleaning one of my shirts. So guess what? She's going to have to eat a half hour later, because in our house, I do the majority of the cooking and she does the majority of the laundry, and we sort of split the dishes. So like, yeah, you can't live a life like that, right? You have to do your best every day and understand the other person's going to make mistakes. But if you are keeping a tally of every mistake somebody did, or not even necessarily a mistake, but they did something that sort of pseudo gives you permission to do something, what kind of life is that?
Right. Well, when you are keeping score, it's your relationship that loses.
Yeah.
And it's not a healthy way to be in a relationship.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm more than happy seeing all, 4 of them, 5 of them, if we count John B going home.
Who are the 4?
5.
Who?
John B, Eliza, Aaron S, Aaron B, and Sam.
Oh.
Let's clear the decks and let's get some interesting people up in here.
Some new fresh blood. So the love square, which is Sean, Jess, Brayden, Rachel.
Yeah, look, Sean, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, so the backstory of this is basically Sean is really into Jess. He pretended to be a Swiftie. Is that what it's called? He pretends to be a Swiftie on night 1. For whatever reason, he just can't get the connection to Jess night 1, but he's been pining over this whole time. Him and Rachel, we've said many times, they have no real connection, but they're just hanging out, doing whatever, waiting for somebody else. And it seems to us that they're kind of on the same page. They know that they're not locked up, but they're just hanging out. And it feels like Jess and Blake are kind of in the same boat. Like, they're open, but whatever. So he decides the night before a rose ceremony, when he is safe, that he is going to go take his shot with Jess, and the manner in which he takes his shot is to pull her down the beach for a private conversation.
Which everyone can see.
Sean, you are on the beach with this girl all day, every day. You telling me that you can't find a time to start having conversations with her one-on-one by the bar, or, at points in time where it wouldn't be so blatantly obvious. Like, I know it's a small beach, but like, you can find interaction times without yanking somebody in such an obvious manner. And if your game plan is to just take your shot and just, basically, either win the game or go home type take your shot situation, wait one day. You have the rose. You know that you are safe for at least another cycle if you wait one day. And now you're going to go home because you're a dumbass.
Yes, but as you're saying this, I just had this like memory unlocked of Gabby and Rachel's season, which you may or may not remember because you were passively watching it. And
Sitting next to you.
And as you may recall, they had a group of men who like kind of they selected and sort of self-selected into some people dating Gabby and some people dating Rachel. So Logan was initially dating Rachel, and he started to realize that he actually had feelings for Gabby, and he wanted to switch to date Gabby. And Rachel gives him a rose, and he takes it, and he says essentially to the camera that he like has like a little bit of ambivalence about taking the rose, but he knows that if he takes it, it will give him the opportunity to talk to Gabby the next day. And Rachel had a real hard time with that. And
can't imagine why.
And so did, America,
Yeah.
Bachelor Nation, that it was, in a lot of ways, it was very opportunistic. And in other ways, it was, pretty dishonest. And so here's where I have like, there's a part of me that's like, all right, Sean, like I appreciate you trying to make an effort to be more genuine and not just take Rachel's rose for the sake of it in order to get time with Jess. Like you are, jumping on a grenade here, basically, for the sake of just not wanting to sit on your feelings any longer. So there's like a level of respect and almost like in a high character sense, respect that he wanted to be authentic, even ahead of a rose ceremony, ahead of knowing that he was risking going home. Okay, so Sean brings Jess over to have this private yet public conversation where he shoots his shot. And Jess, long story short, says, I like you as a friend, but I don't want to string you along. While I am open with Blake, I'm not open for you. And so he essentially, they leave and he goes back to talk with the guys. In the meantime, Brayden is talking with Blake, who also has some like, ulterior motives while in this conversation, as well as Aaron S., and is saying essentially like, this is kind of messed up what Sean is doing to Rachel. And we're hearing like some inkling that Brayden's into Rachel. He goes and finds Rachel and sort of asks her about how she's feeling about this Jess and Sean thing. And then asks, so do you really have a connection with Sean? Because he's saying that you're really, really into him. And that is...
I don't think that's an accurate reflection of what he said.
All right, tell me.
I think Brayden said that that is what Rachel got out of the conversation. But when you actually go back and look at what Brayden said, he was basically just kind of cruising along, saying a bunch of statements. And that was the piece that she grabbed onto. But it wasn't like that was the focal point of his statement. It wasn't like that's what he was trying to nail in there. And I find it interesting the way she reacted to that statement, because effectively all he was saying was, he thinks that you like him a lot, and he's got, kind of some split feelings between multiple people here. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that statement. And I find it really interesting the way Rachel, and that's all she cared about, was, how dare you tell people that I like you more than you like me? It wasn't
really into
it wasn't about how dare you talk to another girl. It wasn't about how dare you disrespect me. It wasn't about how dare you not be better communicator with me. How dare you not give me a heads up that you were going to have a conversation about this? How dare you do this tonight and not wait until after the like? There was a million things that would have been higher on my list to be insulted about. And the only thing over and over and over in the edits we see, all she cares about is, how dare you tell people I like you more than you like me? I thought that was very telling.
Oh, of course. I mean, she said multiple times she felt embarrassed. And the reason that she feels embarrassed by it is because she's not into Sean at all. And that's what was making her so upset, is like, and I hate that. Even with work, I've had people tell me that they were going to resign, and I got pissed because I was going to fucking fire them anyway. And so it feels like it almost like steals your power. In a way, like, even though we both are coming to the same conclusion that this isn't a good match and we don't like one another, it still would have felt really good for me to be the one to say, well, no, I didn't like you either. And I think that's what Rachel's also reacting to, is she doesn't like Sean, and it is probably embarrassing. And I think that the piece of this is, she also felt like Sean pitied her by saying like, oh, like, I didn't want to explore this connection with Jess because I really didn't want to hurt Rachel like that.
But that was her perception. He never said that. And Brayden never conveyed that thought to her.
Fair.
Right. And I'll also point out that, you know, the difference between you and Rachel is when somebody resigned that you wanted out anyways, you didn't turn around and be like, you can't quit, you're fired. Right. Like, I mean, there's a maturity level there and there's a self-regulation, you know, situation there. Instead, you were like, I would have liked to have been the one to do it, you know, just for my own ego sense. But the reality is, you know, what it worked out. Like it worked out better this way. I didn't have to like do anything. Rachel's
well, and to clarify, I would never say that to someone's face. That would be something that I say to you. To the person I said, wishing you all the best.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But all Rachel really needed to do here was say, oh, okay, well, I mean, he and I are on the same page. Neither of us are really all that into each other. We're just sort of coasting along, waiting for the right person for either one of us. You know, if he's taking a shot with Justin, it looks like, you know, maybe I'm not, given the timing that he's taking this shot, maybe I need to reconsider because there's 5 other guys on this beach that, you know, would like a rose. And, you know, I feel a little disrespected. Let me give the rose to somebody who I would like to see hang around.
Yeah. Well, and I think when Rachel and Sean are having that conversation on the beach, she does start to say to him, like, you never told me that this is how you were feeling. And
all of America knew.
Well, okay, but that's not fair. Like, it seems like other couples, like it's very clear Blake and Jess have an understanding. I don't see a romantic connection there. They are friendly. They have a connection, but it's clear that they are essentially have an alliance of some sort around how they're going through this. And Sean and Rachel could have had that too, if he had just communicated to her about that. I get why she's embarrassed and feels a little blindsided, because it felt like they had this unspoken like relationship status, like this agreement. And so it probably did feel awful to her. Not even that he necessarily owed her that, but like the common courtesy around it.
Sure.
So Rachel storms off. Rachel is Racheling.
Let me ask you one more aspect of Rachel's psyche here. Do you think the fact that as a bachelorette, she is supposed to be like royalty on the beach, and Mercedes is getting pulled more than her, Kat's getting pulled more than her, Olivia's getting pulled more than her, basically Eliza, like literally nobody is coming down saying Rachel's the girl I want to meet. Is this just crushing her ego? It's
gotta be. It can't feel good to go from having so much power, right, to not necessarily being a hot commodity. And it can't feel good to her. I have to imagine that.
I mean, I think we have seen a big maturity growth from her season to now. But yeah, maybe it was just, you know, 4 episodes in, and you know, she's been hiding it well, and now this Sean thing was just like,
well, listen, I'm still while Rachel's reaction was, I don't even want to say it was disproportionate. I get it. I probably would have been that upset too.
And you have been that upset many times.
For sure. And
not recently.
I get it. I feel like in some ways Rachel was really valid, because she felt embarrassed. She was having an emotional reaction, not a rational one. And as you said, she picked up on one thread of what Brayden was trying to communicate with her, because it brought out an insecurity in her, again, of not being chosen. How many times has this happened to this woman on this franchise of not being chosen? She was led on by the Bachelor in the season that she was in, told I love you. And then
what season was that?
That was Clayton.
Okay.
And then he also told Gabby that he loved her too. And he ended up not wanting to pick either of them, by the way. Then she goes on her season. She has to split the Bachelorette crown with Gabby. And the entire beginning part of the season, she's hearing all the guys say, I want to date Gabby. And then she has Logan say, sure, I'll date you. And then, oh, never mind, I want to date Gabby. Then the guy that she chooses to marry decides to cheat on her with someone else. So she has a history, at least on this show, I don't know outside of the show, of not being chosen, of someone always thinking the grass is greener with someone else. And so, yeah, she's going to have this reaction. And it makes it sting that much more that she's not even into this fucking guy. So, all right, Rachel, go off. I get it. I get it. So it makes sense why this is part of Rachel's narrative, how she is seeing herself, especially in this world. And so her reaction to me makes sense. Now let's talk about other people's reactions here. Sean is really mad at Brayden and feels like Brayden stabbed him in the back. And so I guess I want to know, from your end, did Brayden do anything wrong?
So the reality is this is a competition at the end of the day. And Sean tries to pull bro code. And look, there are certainly codes of ethics and codes of etiquette that we adhere to. And I think those are less, I would say, less cloak and mirrors than a lot of people would like to pretend that they are, especially in the male world.
Cloak and dagger?
Yeah, it's less like I think females have this perception that bro code is like guys are all just cheating on their significant others and no one's saying anything to anybody or whatever and blah blah blah. Like that's not really what bro code is at all. And I just think it's been misrepresented a lot in kind of society as a whole in this day and age. But there are like bro codes, there are understandings, right? Walking into a men's room, we all know exactly what the acceptable urinal is to use. We don't have to talk about it, right? The fact that there is no talking in a men's bathroom, that's like just understood. We never, like, these are all just codes of ethics and etiquette, right? That we all adhere to. We just know what the rules are. And so the question then is Sean correct? Or did Brayden actually break some sort of bro code? And the answer is absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, this is a competition. And bro code goes out the window the second that it's a competition. Competition for men supersedes bro code. And even if it wasn't a competition, though, I'm still not convinced that he did anything wrong. Like, you were talking to another girl. I went and talked to your girl. Okay. Like, I didn't do anything that you didn't do. The only difference is I'm not committed to anybody right now. So what you're doing was worse than what I was doing. You're just mad that it backfired on you. I mean, one question I have for you about the Rachel being like, I told you I need a minute. And Sean's just like, where do you want me to go? You want me to go sit on the beach by myself? Like, I thought that was actually a moment where in a rough day for Sean, where he has done a lot of things incorrectly. I feel like this is one where I'm like, no, I'm with you, Sean. Like, you're when you say I need a minute, that means we're not going to talk. It doesn't mean that you literally have to vacate the beach and just go drown yourself in the ocean, right? I mean, we could be within 5 feet of each other. It just means we're not engaging with each other. And if you need a minute, take a minute. It's not my responsibility to vacate the common space if you're asking for a minute. I mean, sure, there are times where, there's an appropriateness where, like, if we get into a fight and you're like, I need a minute, it's like, I'm probably going to go into my office if you're sitting in the living room. I'm not going to go sit next to you in the living room on the couch, right? But, it's a different situation than like the bar on the beach, where everybody is type thing, Yeah. So okay. What were your thoughts on her telling him he needs a minute and then telling him to basically just go sit on the beach by himself?
No, I mean, I don't disagree with what you were saying. There was a part of me that, like, when he first popped up there, I was like, can you just leave her alone for a second? Like, there are other locations that he could go, but going to the bar after a situation like that is also like,
pretty standard. Yeah.
So speaking of the bar, Wells, resident bartender, decides that he is going to introduce the truth box,
which is just a secondary take on the Hannah Brown situation. We've had a lot of truth moments in this season.
Yes. And his reason for introducing the truth box, so he says, is to help people have conversations that they'd like to or need to have, because throughout his experience on Paradise, people have said that they have regrets about not saying certain things to certain people. And so he's going to try to help this situation along. And so he encourages people to write anonymous notes, put them in the truth box, and he will periodically read them. So fast forward, it's the next day, it's the cocktail party, and Wells decides, I'm going to read a couple of these. And the first one is a little like funny, humorous about him and his half shots. then there's one about, Brayden and Rachel should make out. And then Aaron S is sort of like, I know nobody's going to pick me and I know I'm going home. So fuck it. I'm just going to cause some chaos. And he decides to smash open the truth box. Well says you opened it, so go ahead and read what's in there. And it is basically just a bonfire with Cat on the stake.
Yeah, I loved every part of Aaron F's here. It was the first time in the show where I was actually really interested and compelled in what he was doing. I agree. Like go for broke. I'm going home. So I want to know what's in that box, and I'm going home. So I would be in the same boat. Like, I'm going to find a way to get this stuff read while I'm still here, because I've got 5 hours left maximum. Mm-hmm. So I loved it. I could see myself doing something similar just out of curiosity alone of what is in that box.
Brayden basically says to Rachel, hey, let's go for a walk.
Do you think that he was the one who put most of those in there?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And she knew it too.
Yeah.
And I thought, actually, that's
well
kind
played.
Of a cute way to do it. Even though he didn't know that they were going to be read.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, he seems to be very friendly with Aaron S. It's possible Aaron S had said, dude, that box is getting open tonight. Mm-hmm. I'm not going home without knowing what's in that box. Mm-hmm. And I would love to know if there's a little forewarning to that. And, which would give me more credit if he's like, oh, if it's going to get open, I'm going to use this advantage. That would have, that inside information would have elevated Brayden even higher up my books if he,
Yes. Well, let's just do let's go to Brayden and Rachel for a second, and then we'll go back to Aaron S in the box. So they end up making out, and damn, they've got chemistry.
Maybe. We'll see.
They seem to really enjoy making out, which good for both of them.
I mean, they're two attractive people.
Yeah.
I mean, in my entire life, have always enjoyed making out with attractive people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, I count that among one in my entire life, really. One attractive person I've made out with my whole life.
That's sad for you.
I thought that was sweet of me, no?
Anyway, so we'll see what the future holds for Brayden and Rachel, but he does take advantage of that moment, and yeah, he goes for it, and they seem to be having a fun time.
Yeah, it seems now a foregone conclusion, unless somebody else comes down. Sean's going home. Brayden just effectively stole the rose. I do like the synergy here and kind of the callback. Sean came in here shit talking Brayden. They become kind of friends. Sean misplays a hand tremendously bad. Brayden kind of swoops in and steals his rose and sends him home. I love the whole thing. My only question is that Sean has been the kind of male narrator for the last few episodes. So who are they going to get to replace it? Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like they have a character right now that's ready to take that role.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So going back to the truth box and Aaron S and Kat, Kat is basically saying, this is dark. This has got dark, basically. And so she takes Tanner to the side and checks in with Tanner and says, that was rough. How are you? And Tanner basically says, all of that plus what, Brayden basically told me about how your relationship ended definitely causes me to be a little bit weary, because now you and I are in the same place that you and Brayden were. And so who's to say that you're not going to do to me what you did to him? And she says to him, essentially,
what you see is oblivious.
What you see is what you get.
And we're like, yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that there's something better underneath what you're putting out here.
And so I don't know how it happened, but Kat and Aaron S end up in a conversation. And Kat seems to be directing all of her anger at Aaron S.
As if he wrote all of this.
Yes, that he is the reason for her being in this predicament. So they have a conversation where Aaron is basically I'm Brayden's best friend here, and I just want to know, essentially, not looking back on it, is there anything that you would do differently about the situation there. And Kat essentially says, this is none of your business. I don't need to answer to you. And so essentially they get into a little bit of a dialogue where Kat storms off and Aaron is like, okay, you're exactly who I thought you were. And then it ends and she goes and she vents.
So obviously she had a huge outburst, temper tantrum, outburst, whatever you want to call it, interface to camera. You tell me, like, relative to other outbursts, where does this one rank?
This feels like the biggest one we've seen, and we've seen her.
Not just her. I'm talking about in franchise. Because this was pretty big.
This was big. I mean, we've seen big outbursts before, but this was really something. This was up there for sure.
So last week we were talking about how you thought that this was indicative of some sort of shame response. More or less evidence supporting that original theory?
I'm still going to stick with that because that's what my therapist self wants me to be really curious about, why Kat is reacting in the way that she is. But here's what I'm going to say. If it is a shame response, that doesn't give her the permission to act and behave and treat people like this. You don't get to spray your shame on everybody just because you might be, I don't know, dealing with your own insecurity. And so I want to make sure that I balance what I said last week with, and we are still responsible for our actions and our reactions. And so I don't know. I feel like it was really hard for me to cultivate empathy for Kat this week. Yeah. She lacked patience. She lacked compassion. She sounded so, and this is very judgmental. This is very Amy. She sounded like a brat. And I don't understand. I'm very concerned with her ability to have true relationships. And I mean, friendships, romantic relationships, because conflict arises in relationships, differences of opinion, misinterpretations of what happened. This happens to us all the time. Like, you need to be able to communicate effectively. And part of communicating, I mean, while she's good at talking, she's not good at listening. And that's clearly getting her in all of this trouble in terms of her relationship. She just really can't see outside of herself. It's very egocentric in the way that she's navigating the world. And I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah, I agree. It does actually happen a lot in our relationship. There's plenty of times where you think I'm wrong, and in fact, I'm not. Yeah. Yeah, I think Kat obviously has a rose this week. I think she's still giving it to Tanner, but I guess we'll see. If I'm a producer, I'm thinking that is a gravy train of drama if I just dump somebody in there that Tanner's going to be interested in.
Well, and they must do that. We see the previews for next week, and it's Kat's birthday, and they have
yes, that's right. Yeah,
Davia come down, who is a stunning woman, and we already see it. She's going to take Tanner on a date on Kat's birthday, and they refer to it as Hurricane Kat is going to hit the beach. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think people are sort of like almost rooting for her demise and saying, like, this is karma. She's
an easy villain.
She's an easy villain. She's not making any friends.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about it. We don't have to go too long into it, but one of the notes in the box was a warning for Jess about Kat. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all just the relationship the romantic relationship aspect of it. Some of it was actually the friendship relationships. I am very interested to know who put that in the box. Was that like a Kylie type person, or was that like just Brayden stuffing the box with more stuff? So I would love to know.
It had to be one of the girls, because
I think so.
They commented on the fact, or maybe it was Olivia. I could see it being Olivia. Because she was the one to make that comment of like, they're supposed to be best friends, and Kat went with Jess's number one on a date, meaning Tanner. So it wouldn't shock me if it was like someone like Olivia.
I forgot about the Tanner Jess thing. Do we think that she denied Sean because she's still holding out hope that Kat is going to blow things up with Tanner and she can slide into Tanner's DMs?
I mean, those things they can be mutually exclusive. I think she can definitely not be into Sean.
There's something about Sean that's sort of entertaining, but I can understand why girls would not not be interested in him.
Mhm.
So it sounds like we're going to end this episode with Cat in a state of R45-7, and we'll move on. What's so funny?
Can you define what R45-7 is?
Yeah, R45-7 is a diagnostic code for severe shock and like emotional turmoil from an unspecified source.
What do you think unspecified means?
Well, no, unspecified means that there's, I mean, she might have a specific reason, but she's wrong.
You think, from your armchair psychologist perch, that
Wait. Armchair psychotherapist. I don't like psychology. I think that's of the mental health professions. The psychotherapy, is the better one.
That's what I am.
I know, that's why it's the better one.
And so, from your perch, you think that you see what is it? State of
R45.
emotional shock and stress, unspecified, to the degree that it's diagnosable.
I mean, I feel like she could get some pills. Am I wrong?
I'm not here to comment on that. Let's go into grade the game.
Okay. Olivia
is going to get a B+ for me.
B+. Why so low?
Because I think that the way that she engaged with Peter was a little too much.
Like hope giving?
Yeah, or even like letting herself almost get convinced into like having a connection with him. Like I feel like she played herself in a way.
Interesting. Maybe I'm just giving her a little bit more credit than that. I was just going to give her, kind of like more like a 93, somewhere right on the cusp between like an A and an A-. I am not convinced that she is actually into Peter. I think she knows how to play the game, and she's, getting the good edit and sort of coasting along. And I think that John Henry's her guy, and that's just where she's going.
Okay. What about Sean?
Oh, I mean, Sean for me is a straight up F. I mean, everything he did in this episode was wrong, for all the reasons we already talked about. We don't have to rehash them, but he would have been probably a D if he waited until after the rose ceremony. But between the before the rose ceremony, making it so apparent, not kind of prepping the ground by trying to find little opportunities throughout the day to talk to her. Just every single part of it was bad. Going in and then, blaming Brayden and giving the opening to Brayden. Like, how did he not think that somebody else was going to do the same thing on a rose ceremony? I mean, that's where you got to defend your ground, right? You're in the red zone at this point. Like, defend. And he was too busy playing offense.
Yeah. Well, listen, I do think that speaks to his, I've said it before, he's an overly confident guy. And in his mind, he might have believed that Rachel was really into him. And therefore, as a result, he had enough ability to explore a different connection because he was so solid with Rachel.
Mm-hmm. So where do you rank him?
Yeah, an F.
F, yeah.
Total, like, bad timing. If he really wasn't to Jess, he's had a week and a half or more to figure it out, to make some sort of gesture toward her. If he also, again, really wanted to play the game, he would have included and kind of collaborated with Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
There were just so many missed opportunities here, and leaving Rachel open to one of the several other guys that needs a rose.
Yep. You want to do John Henry?
Yeah. John Henry, I think.
I know we haven't seen much, so it's a little bit difficult.
I'm going to give John Henry, I'm going to give him an A.
Okay.
I'm going to give him an A because he has game unsuspectingly, because he is so endearing and so authentic and genuine. And that is in and of itself disarming and wins over hearts and minds as well. He just seems like a real down-to-earth guy that he might not need to pull strings and whatnot. So I think he was just himself, and that worked.
Yeah, I'm somewhere between a B plus, A minus. I think he landed on the beach. His target, girls were, like Kylie and whatnot. He ends up going for the girl that's actually acquirable. Seems to have, hits it off fairly well to the point where I believe that they actually would have a good spark and a good, initial connection. And, I think he's, having just arrived on the beach, unlike say John B, I think he's already safe for the rose. I know you disagree a little bit, but I think he's already safe for the rose. So yeah, he's somewhere in the B plus, A minus. And why don't we'll cap it off with the other John B, the other new arrival for this week.
Yeah, I think he I give him like a C minus.
I'm right there with you.
I think that people told him the connection between Eliza and Aaron B was strong. And I just don't think, again, with that many guys on the beach, he should have made a play to disrupt an already strong connection.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he could have gone and like 4 different directions. That would have been an easier get. I think this is a one and done. I think he's one day on the beach and he goes home. Seemed just, poor across the board. And I would have felt a little bit differently if we had seen something in the actual date that said, oh, this guy's got massive game where he can make a pull like this, but I just didn't see it. So C minus for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So you want to move on to Rose and Thorns?
Sure.
Okay. What were yours this week?
Let's see. My rose this week was the John Henry and Olivia date. I just loved that. I laughed when he was, speaking Spanish to her and like counting to her. I just found the whole date so fun, and I loved it. It was, like, as I said, my favorite date I've seen, and I really, really like him. And so getting to know him was kind of my high point. So he gets my rose along with just the date itself.
Yeah. And he and I have comparable Spanish skills.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And my thorn this week, my thorn, wait, I was going to talk about my thorn, but it reminded me of like a second rose that I had.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And this was, again, like a little bit of, I feel like some of my roses are like high point moments. And then some of my roses are like the Schadenfreude experience of like getting a lot of pleasure out of someone else's pain. And I fucking loved when the producers showed us people overhearing Kat. I love when they sort of break the fourth wall in that way.
Yep.
And so that I found hilarious. I loved that. I loved that they were able to hear that. It just became like its own character. And we talked about this on the A side too, of Golden Bachelor, and like the breaking of the fourth wall, and like how much as an audience it really does for us. And so yeah, that was my, like, if I have 2 roses to give out, those would be my 2.
Okay.
My thorn goes to Kat, which is like probably an obvious one, but I just like her entitlement, the lack of communication skills, just her overall attitude, just she really has a long way to go to get a redemption arc. I don't even know how she's going to do it. I don't know how. And again, I'm a therapist. I'm trained to find empathy in even the most unlikable people and situations, and I'm having a hard time finding empathy here, and that says a lot.
Yeah.
What about you?
So my rose this week is for Aaron S. breaking the box. I loved it. Loved every part of that whole kind of segment. I would say kind of the lesser kind of rose, kind of the runner-up rose for me would just be the ending of the plot line of the him and the Sam and the Pooh Baby stuff. I'm happy to see that go. And for my thorn for the week, I think I'm just gonna go with Sean Rachel, the whole thing. It's hard to say like which one's gonna get. So I'll just give it to the whole situation. I thought Sean's handling of everything was bad. I thought that Rachel's, interpretation of events was just as bad. Made some interesting and entertaining segments of the show, but obviously these are two people that are not gonna get married, as somebody pointed out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Next week's episode looks like it's going to be a good one. So I'm excited to see what happens there. What Sean's fate is, along with the, 7 other or several other men who aren't matched up already. I guess there's 5 men that might go home.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So a lot to look forward to there.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to the end of our B-side of Reactivity TV this week. If you haven't checked out our Part A, Golden Bachelor, Episode 4, go check that out as well. And thank you so much for tuning in, for following along. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to our channel. Also, we have another podcast, Wishing You Well, which is all about helping you navigate your wellness journey. It is so complicated to figure out how to make wellness fit in your life. And each week, my co-host Catherine and I help you discover a different area of wellness to figure out what fits best for you. So definitely go check that out on YouTube and also Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can continue to follow along with us on Instagram at ReviveCFW. You can follow me at Amy Albero LCSW. Check out our website, revivecfw.com. And until next time, we're wishing you well. See you then. Bye.
See ya.